we've seen a bunch of these articles, a bunch of these tweets. They're threatening to riot over Amy Coney Barrett. They're threatening to riot just again because of Louisville, because of Breonna Taylor. Now, Jack Posobiec tweeted that there's, Kenosha is preparing an announcement. We'll see what happens. Some people think it's about Kyle Rittenhouse. I doubt it. It's probably about the officers not getting charged or something. Personally, based on that news alone, I kind of feel like it's gonna kick off. I mean, they're threatening it for a variety of reasons. So I guess my question is, do you agree? And do you guys see this getting worse over the next couple of months? Like, are we going to see more Kyle Rittenhouse situations?
I mean, I don't want to say like it's going to get worse, but to be honest, I think it is from what I've been seeing, just because the country's so divided. And then like I feel like the election is just going to like send this thing overboard. One big thing for me that I kind of keep telling people is, whether if Biden wins, the right's not going to accept it. If Trump wins, the left's not going to accept it. And we're just in a crazy time. The Women's March, like I said, moved up their event to October 17th. Usually they wait till after the election. And, I don't know what's going to happen, but it definitely seems that it's not getting any better. I mean, from what I've seen on the ground, it's definitely not getting any better. What do you think, Shelby? I don't know. I
would agree. I think your question about if there's going to be more Rittenhouse situations, you hope not, of course. I think that there's a definite, something to be said, 17-year-olds with whatever. I'm not a gun person.
What did he have, a 223?
The big...
Was it an AR-15?
Yeah, the AR-15 going into these very volatile situations where things can change at the blink of an eye. Like that, you're not trained for that. You know what I mean? And if you want to go and whatever reason he had for being there, will we see it again? Again, you hope not. But can I say no? Of course not. I can't predict the future, but I do think that there will be riots. I think there's been ups and downs all this year, and we'll see an up again.
And I think we're starting to see kind of a portion of America that is getting really sick and tired of seeing their cities destroyed, and it's getting to a point where they're saying, if I have to pick up a gun and I have to go out there and do it myself, then I will. And that's what that Kyle Rittenhouse situation was.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah, and I think it's it's not a good precedent for our country to be in. We'll see what happens, but I mean, when we have the destruction that we're seeing, you're going to have a portion of people who feel like they are not protected and they have to do something for the community, and we're going to continue to see that until we see some type of law and order restored, hopefully coming into this new year with this election. But like I said, I don't think so.
What do you think, Richie?
Yeah, what I think is that what I've noticed is an ongoing theme from across all these protests, and we were talking about this yesterday, is that the individuals who are out there, everybody has a cause, right? And the ones who are actually engaging in the violence are perhaps the most lost in terms of how much they're putting into it and how much they hate, for example, law enforcement. So what we saw in Kenosha was basically two different sides that had causes that they really believed in. And in a situation where there's no law enforcement, well, they were close, but clearly they weren't, doing their normal jobs. They were doing riot control. They weren't, trying to keep, obviously, Kyle Rittenhouse from...
What were they doing? They weren't protecting the businesses. The windows were getting smashed. The fires were starting.
Well, I think that actually comparing DC's riot control to Kenosha, I mean, DC is literally, they're babysitting that crowd the entire time that they're out marching. And there's a little bit of irony there that, the cops are stopping the traffic for the protesters who want to stop the traffic to keep them safe. But in Kenosha, that was not the case. And that's what I'm saying is that
the first or the second night, because the first night we weren't there. That's when things really popped off. The second night was when everything burned to the ground. The third night was the shooting. And the second night, I think Kenosha was just so unprepared. And it caused these individuals, these armed individuals, to come out in the third night. They were there the second night protecting one gas station, but there was only 3 or 4 of them. And then the third night when the shooting happened, there were double or triple, I would say, that amount.
And the more small cities where that kind of stuff happens, the law enforcement isn't trained for that. And so that's the reason why I'm using DC as an example. And if that just continues to spread across our country, I do think
you guys know that ammo shortages across the country. You can't get 9mm. I mean, I've been out to, I think, 2 different shops, and they got nothing. They got no ammo because everybody. And I was at a shop recently. Guy walks in and he walks up and he's like, "You got 9mm?" And the guy's, "No." And apparently it's like $1 a round now, up from like a dime or something. It's like, it's sold out. What's interesting about it is that, for one, liberals have started buying up guns. These people who normally passively just said, yeah, gun control, all of a sudden they're gun owners, record gun sales. Ammo gets bought up like crazy. So what does that mean for small towns like Kenosha, where law enforcement isn't getting the job done, where we see these district attorneys not prosecuting? That's what I'm worried about, man. I'm worried. I think Kyle should not have been out there. But I think the police should have been out there. I think the rioters shouldn't have been. Like, there's multiple steps we have to clear before we get to blaming Kyle for being, I think, a dumb kid. It's riots shouldn't happen.
It was a failure on multiple ends.
Absolutely. And then finally you get this kid. Now they're smearing him and calling him all these crazy things. I don't think he was being smart. It sounds basically what you guys are saying sounds like he's really dumb. Waving the gun, running, like not knowing what he was doing. And apparently it wasn't even his gun. It was given to him by somebody else. So what I see there is, I'm more concerned about the bigger picture than I am him as an individual. The bigger picture is that you're going to get more inexperienced people. They're going to be handed guns. What happens when there's a small town in, I don't know, Pennsylvania? Maybe it's a town of like 30,000 people. So it's not, the biggest town, but it's 30,000 people. And what happens when the rioters show up and then some dude hands a handgun, like, laws be damned, we're not going to take this weapon, and that person's never fired before. It's we can talk about the laws and gun control all day and night, but when it comes to someone marching down your street with a torch or a brick or a Molotov, people are going to be like, I don't care. When people talk about whether Kyle should have had the weapon or not, I mean, the kid picked up the weapon when he's like not legally allowed to have it because he was 17, not 18. What do you think people are going to do? It's you come to that neighborhood, they're going to say, I don't have the luxury of worrying about what comes after with these laws. I have to worry about right now the guy in front of my house with the Molotov. That's what I'm worried about happening.
And we kind of saw that example too when we were in Louisville, Kentucky. There was that moment that I was able to capture with the Middle Eastern business owner, where you just have this huge mob.
Oh, that was what was his name? Fari?
Yeah,
Fadi?
Yeah, and I visited him earlier in the day before I even got that video.
Well, so real quick, this is a guy who was like surrounded and was refusing to say Black Lives Matter. Is that him?
Yeah, and the thing is so he has a smoke shop. Then like right there, he's leasing another business that was firebombed the night before. So I showed up when they were still doing an investigation. And he was very, very upset. They don't want to speak to me, and I don't blame him. He just had a business firebomb. And then later that night, me and Shelby are kind of following this crowd. And then that's when we see, I just see this huge, kind of like a mob start to approach him. And then they come up to him and say, does Breonna Taylor's life matter? Does Black Lives Matter? They're trying to get him to say, and he wouldn't say that. He was chilling there with his gun. But even that situation could have ended, bad. I mean, he was cool, calm, and collective. But we're just seeing those type of examples all across the country where people don't even trust the cops anymore to restore law and order. They have to literally sit in front of their business throughout the whole night if they have to, just to make sure it doesn't,
and
get
all
burnt to
it
the ground.
takes is one person with a gun who doesn't quite know what they're doing or gets frazzled or gets surrounded, and that's literally
and those
all
people
it
were kind of charging him. They were getting in his face, and they were yelling at him. So I mean, like I said, thank God he was cool, calm, and collective. But like we said, if it was another individual who was inexperienced, as soon as people charge up, they're already like could be gun swinging. So it was just a crazy moment to capture. And then when we posted, it's opening Americans' eyes to like what's happening on the ground.
It's crazy to me that in the debates, Joe Biden says Antifa doesn't exist. And it's not just Antifa. It's just, I think the bigger issue is far left extremism. It's crazy to me that you get like from the FBI, right wing and white supremacy are the biggest threats. And I'm like, they talk about the Proud Boys. And I was saying this earlier. If 300 Proud Boys like started marching around my neighborhood, you know what I would do? I'd do literally nothing. I wouldn't care. Like when the Proud Boys have come out and they're left to their own devices, they just wave little American flags and then get drunk. And then they leave and they yell uhuru or whatever it is they do. If I heard that Black Lives Matter or Antifa was coming, I'd pack up and get out. I'm not going to stick around, because we've already seen what happens when they come to your property and threaten you. The cops arrest you. You know, we see what happens to people who panic, not saying it's a good thing, but, you know, think they got to defend their neighborhood. They're going to arrest you. I'm not worried about Proud Boys. Nobody knows who they are. There's not even that many of them. But the far left unrest has been everywhere. I got a call from a friend in the far west Chicago suburbs, dinky, tiny little town. Yep, they showed up, and they didn't even live there. That's scary. So then you see in the debates, Joe Biden won't denounce it. Joe Biden's campaign staff bailing these people out in Minneapolis. Kamala Harris soliciting donations to bail these people out. I am worried that, you know, right now there's the debate over whose America is this. Trump says, in Biden's America, this is what you'll get. And then people laugh and say, yeah, Trump, you're president now. And I'm like, nah, here's the way I see it. They deputized the Oregon State Police in Oregon. They then deputized the Portland Police. So now if you get arrested by the state troopers or the Portland PD, the feds charge you. And that's freaking these people out. That's Trump. Joe Biden, his campaign staff bailing these people out. I'm worried that if Biden gets elected, it's going to be, let's negotiate and figure out what we can do to appease them. Yeah, they might start. They might stop rioting, because Biden and the Democrats are going to be like, here are the things you've asked for. Like, we're going to give in to your demands. I think if Trump gets elected, he's going to be like, he's going to put on the iron gauntlet and slam his iron fist. But I don't know, man. I don't know if you guys get that political on the issue, because I think you're mostly just on the ground reporters, and I'm talking like politics. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on, you know, like, well, yeah, what do you think about the local government? What do you think about Trump's responses? Do you think they've said Trump's made it worse? Do you guys have any opinions?
I mean, one thing that I could kind of take away is when we were like covering the situation in like Seattle and Chaz. When we go, you know, I'll just, you know, go out to just speak to regular folks in Seattle. Even like one thing I found interesting was like the Trump supporters and the conservatives, they got to a point where they really wanted Trump to intervene and not kind of use it as like a political playground, you know, because Trump will come out and say, hey, well, that's happening in Democrat cities, let them burn. But people forget there's Trump supporters in those Democrat cities who do want, you know, to see their city or state, you know, see the law and order restored. So that's one thing that I took away was folks in Seattle and then conservatives in Portland, they got to the point where they actually want to see Trump like actually come in and do something and not kind of see them kind of bashing their city. So I found that interesting. But, you know, every city is different, or every situation is different. I think with the situation in Louisville, I think they wanted to avoid the chaos so bad that they just said, hey, we're going to declare unlawful assemblies like right when curfew occurs, and we're just arresting everyone. And hopefully that sends a message. I mean, one thing that I could kind of take away from my jail experience was with the men that I was with is after they were in jail, almost all of them said, we're not coming back anymore. Like, this is it. Like, after being in here, this sucks. And like the people that I met, at least in my cell, were mostly out of towners. So I had people from Indiana, Detroit, and Ohio that were down in Louisville, and almost like 9 out of 10 of them said, dude, we're not coming back after this. Like, this sucks. So I don't know if that's maybe needs to happen in more cities where you just mass arrest these people and just maybe send a message. We'll see if that works, because I know in Portland people were getting arrested and getting turned around in like 3-4 hours. They're already out.
Yep. Coming right back.
Yeah, so maybe that's what needs to happen. When I went to Atlanta after Rashard Brooks, it was the unrest was bad because we were at the Wendy's where he got killed, and there was literally, it was a no cop go zone. So the gangsters in that hood ran that Wendy's, and they literally did not let white people in and out. So that was
in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, so that was one of the good times that Shelby and Richie weren't with me, because they probably wouldn't have been even let into the no go zone.
Whoa.
So.
That wasn't reported.
Yeah, and one thing that bothered me when we were in Atlanta was that me and another reporter, Julio Rosas, we were blasting it on social media trying to show people the violence happening in that little section, because it was a no-go zone. The 3 nights that we were on the ground reporting, 2 of the nights shots were fired at the Wendy's, so we were there for that, and it didn't get any traction with any big media or law enforcement. Even the very next week after we were gone is when that 8-year-old girl went to visit that vigil and got shot and killed. And it took that moment for them to say, okay, we're sending National Guard. Same thing at Chaz. We went in there and like attacked it, you know, trying to expose it. And then it took 2 people getting shot and killed for you know, for something to happen. But it's just been you know, every city's different. I don't know how, you know, what's the correct way to handle it, but it's kind of been interesting just to kind of get that feedback.
One of the first things I asked you guys, I was like, oh, you've clearly got time to be here. You know, we've had like for the past 4 months, every day I wake up, I'm like, oh, it's like I do a segment in the morning, my morning riot update for everybody. Turn on your car stereos on your way to work and listen about the riots. Because every single night, there have been a couple over the past few nights, and this actually freaks me out. I didn't talk about them because the politics stuff is getting bigger. And I've mentioned before, that's actually a problem because it's normalized. Like the stuff happening in the Pacific Northwest, now it's just like, oh, they're throwing firebombs again. What am I really going to tell anybody? Hey, they threw firebombs again. All right, have a nice day.
I was talking to Richie about that earlier. Actually, we were sort of looking at where the unrest is right now, and I said something like, it's Portland and Seattle, like they're not doing this for like any reason. It's just violence at this point. It's not like Louisville where they began protesting over the Breonna Taylor the verdict. They're just doing it to cause chaos, and so it's less interesting almost. Because compared to going to Louisville or potentially going to Kenosha next week, depending on what happens.
Wait, is there news coming out?
Well, we don't know what the news is, but
something's about to happen.
Something allegedly is about to happen. So that's interesting because it's something sparked it, and in like Portland, it's just I don't know what's sparking it. Like they got what they wanted, right? Like the National Guard stood down, and then people, and there's still violence and chaos going on, and
it didn't work.
Well, I agree with that, and I think what Kenosha and my personal experience with Kenosha, really the lesson that I learned there is the degree to which the facts on the ground are being neglected in favor of whatever narrative you want to push. And I think both sides are guilty of that. But specifically, with respect to Kyle, it was weeks before, CNN, Washington Post contacted me. And I think part of the reason is because my testimony, it didn't fit what they wanted to put out there.
Wait, so they didn't like hit you up like, hey, you're like the witness, you were involved. They didn't talk to you or what?
I think what happened was basically the Wednesday night after the shooting, I went on Tucker Carlson, and my goal in this is one thing and one thing only, and that's to tell the public, the greater public, not just one echo chamber, what I saw. And I think after I went on Tucker, that really turned off half of the media establishment from what I had to say. And there's actually a CNN report that said that I supported the conservative belief that Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. It said that.
But you never said that.
I said Kyle told me that he was there to protect the small businesses.
Right.
And he mentioned an absence of police. So I wasn't supporting any claim. I'm playing a role here as a witness. So having experienced that, I really learned the degree to which, the facts on the ground can just don't even matter anymore. So I think that's what's different now than previous riots and stuff like that.
I take a look at like the press conference held by these doctors over COVID. Breitbart did a live stream of it, and then Facebook deleted it because it was misinformation. But I'm like, but it's just a press conference that was hosted by doctors and a Republican politician. Yeah. Why is the news organization being struck down? Your story is similar in the sense that if the narrative doesn't fit, the news organization is, you're a provocateur. You're not a journalist anymore. The moment you say something that steps out of line, like Andy No, all these news organizations say right-wing provocateur. And it's like, what has he done? Other than just like, here's people, here's what they're doing, here's a video of it. Nope, that makes him an activist, a provocateur. And I think part of it, too, has to do with how prominent, Andy started getting. So for those that aren't familiar, Andy No is just, he's a journalist in the Pacific Northwest who covers far-left violence. He calls it what it is. And now that he's gaining more and more followers as he's, publishing a lot of this information and exposing what these people are doing, they know now he's so, well known. They say he's a right-wing provocateur. I don't know of any right-wing groups that he's a part of. Like, he's not partisan. He's not talking about voting for Trump. I think he said that he's like center-right politically or something to that effect, but that erases his identity as a journalist, and that's it. I don't know if you guys can even comment on this, like why it is that you think the media is downplaying or even protecting the extremists that are causing the violence.
I just off the bat, I would say maybe it has to do something with doesn't protect their side, doesn't fit the narrative for their side. It's hard to tell. But like how we said, we try to be out there, try to get the full scoop, show you guys everything, and then let you decide. It's difficult to understand. I mean, one thing that bothered me was that thing in Kenosha where, I didn't even see any like reporters talking to the business owners. These people are devastated. Livelihood gone. Who's going to share their stories? We ran into one witness who said a 7-year-old man was beat trying to protect his business, and he still burned. I
saw that video.
Yeah,
right?
And
they bashed him over the back of the head.
And to me, it was just like, if you're in media news, why are we not sharing these stories of these? These are Americans just like us. They're in the middle class. They work 9-to-5 jobs. We should be sharing these stories. And I don't know. I'm only been in DC for 4 months, but I don't know if it's like the whole connection of, you always hear the rumors before you move to DC, hey, don't get too caught up in your DC bubble. Don't forget to us real Americans. And maybe that is a thing where they're so caught up in this DC bubble. They're like, well, hey, I could look out the window and my high rise isn't burning down. So the whole everyone's doing fine.
Oh, dude.
So I don't know if it's that aspect, but to me, I think that's for me just that folks are too elite in media.
Do you remember that tweet from the guy in Hollywood where he's like, yeah, they're rioting, woo, and then, oh no, the riots are near my house, stop, go the other way, go to the poor neighborhood.
You, bro. I've been in DC for 12 years, so I can definitely comment on, and I worked at NBC. One of my first weeks there was the Newtown shooting, and that will forever stick out in my head because when you have people who sit in these multi-million-dollar studios and they talk about these human tragedies day in and day out, I think there's a certain callousness that you develop. And having experienced that human suffering firsthand, literally having Rosenbaum dying in my arms, I am now so much more aware of the actual suffering that is taking place as a byproduct of what's happening in our country right now. And that's not just in the riots. That's why are these people mad in the first place? Why are they going out there and so desperate to, tear down the fence around the federal courthouse in Portland? And the answer is it all starts with the economics and our generation. I'm 31 and I won't say how old Shelby is. She's very young. And,
27.
But our generation,
no shame.
We've talked about this extensively. We're one of the first, probably the first generation of Americans who are inheriting in America that's less prosperous than what our parents grew up in or entered their professional lives in. And I think there's a profound disillusionment that's happening in 20-somethings and, millennials. And I think that's the real root. And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the mental health or opioids because if it bleeds, it leads. You know what I mean?
I think it's a lack of purpose. No one's got anything to do. No one knows why they're here. Yeah.
We've talked about that a little bit too. Like these groups, it almost seems like they don't know who they are, what they want, and this is a community for people.
Yep.
As strange as it sounds, it's a team. It's something to fight for and belong to, and I think that the media. I think also it's so divisive these days. Like with Trump, if Trump says something, I think, and this does not mean I am pro-Trump or anything, I'm very non-political, but you can just see it. You don't have to be political to see that if Trump says something, many people in the media just automatically go to the other end of the spectrum.
In the most extreme way.
So what has Trump done? He has called out these violent riots. He has, used them. He has spoken about them. And so the media downplays them. And I think that is definitely a part of it as well.
So Trump needs to come out and support Antifa for them to finally crack down on the riots. Antifa is great. They're the best. I love what they do. Trump is supporting violent extremists, people. And then they go full capitalist. Trump just announces he's a communist. And then they
perfect.
I mean, that is an ongoing joke from the Babylon Bee. It's like other satire sites. Whatever Trump says, they say the opposite.
Yeah, impeachment.
But one thing I actually kind of wanted to mention, kind of piggyback what they were saying too, is, being on the ground and just striking some conversations with folks. I think it's that too, is the lack of purpose in their life. I think a lot of folks that I've met, they kind of see this as a moment of revolution. Mm-hmm. So it kind of fills that void. One thing that I would be more interested in if I could have a chance to sit down is just, finding more about these people's family lives. I think that one thing that we don't talk about in media and politics is just having a strong family structure is a big deal in our society, and I think we shouldn't shy away from that conversation. We should be speaking about it, especially in 2020 and a time like this. We should be talking about family again. That's just me.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. So come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.